Film Riot. Before we get into today's episode, I did see a few people asking about the shirts that we've been wearing on the show, especially Josh's aspect ratio shirt. And you can find those on triunedigital.com. We do sell all of our shirts again, some hoodies, some hats. So we have a bunch of that filmmaker goodie there. If you do want it, we'll put links in the notes below as well. But the thing I wanted to talk about today is something that I'm asked a lot online and a lot from friends. And for me, it boils down to the fear of failure. And the question isn't ever about the fear of failure, but I think that is fundamentally what the question is about and what's causing the thing. And it's usually something about, how do I get past this writer's block? How do I stop procrastinating and just do it? I want to be a director, but I want to be an actor, but I want to be a writer, but I want to be an editor. Where do I start? And the idea for all of those things is simply just start, just do, just make things. I think oftentimes, especially from talking to friends who have said these things to me and really boiling down what's stopping them, what is stopping them is the fear of failure, is the fear of looking stupid, of doing something sucky. And I think it's really liberating to know, understand, and accept the fact that yes, you are going to fail at first. Yes, you are going to look stupid at first. And yes, it's gonna suck probably. I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen anyone's early works and thought, wow, that's great. You know, at best, what I thought was, you can definitely tell that there's some talent there. You can see the diamond that's, you know, surrounded by coal, and now it needs to be stripped down to that thing. And that's years and years of work. And thankfully, my mindset has always been, you bring on failure. That has always been my motto of fail big, fail often. I've said it on the show a lot, and we've done it openly and publicly. And I think where I had the advantage to easily have that thought process, whereas people nowadays, younger people, it's a little harder, is thanks to social media, is thanks to YouTube comments being the norm. Back in the day, you know, the comment section was not a thing yet. So that was not a concept that was in my mind. That idea of that harsh judgment was not in my mind. Whereas people now, that really is a block. And I have noticed at times that that's even a block for me, for things that I wanted to post or put on Twitter or do on Film Riot. And I had to consciously make sure I was not allowing that to stop me from looking stupid and accepting it. And if you go back in the early days of Film Riot, you can see how often we look stupid, how often we would try stuff and it would just be terrible. It would suck awful. The sound would be horrendous sometimes, horribly overexposed sometimes. But the point was, the idea was, and what was great about it, was the acceptance of making those mistakes and just loving the process of learning, of diving into these things and refining down to hopefully that diamond, to where we came from where we were, if you watch the earlier Film Riot stuff, to where we are now making stuff like There Comes a Knocking or Ballistic, because of that welcomeness to failure. Bring it on. Failure is the bridge to success, is what I've always said. So the thing I boil it down to, and the thing I want to point out, is kind of a 3-step thing. 1, fail big, fail often. 2, analyze those failures. Don't be ashamed of them. Be glad they happen because you're learning from them and understand that. And 3, do it again. Do it again and do it better and accept it even more. Don't let the failure that you recognize in yourself stop you from doing it again. So 1, fail big, fail often. You're not attempting to fail. You're just gonna. You don't have to try to fail. You're going to. And if you fail, that just means you're trying. You're pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. Like, one of my biggest failures of my entire career was a very public one, which was Outsiders. And if you've watched the show for the last, I don't know, I think it would be 6 years now, 7 years now, you know about this failure. It would have been my biggest short film, even to date. It was a 30-minute script. It was going to be about a $300,000 budget. It got to the point where it was the Friday before the Monday we were about to start shooting when the whole project fell through because half the finances just fell through, which does happen with indie film. Actors were ready and signed. People were on planes on their way there. We had someone who had worked on the Transformers films building sets for us in Austin. We had all the props already made. It was the most stressful time of my entire life where, being honest with you, I was dry heaving on a daily basis because there was this massive machine of hundreds of people that were going to be involved with this thing, and it was about to crash and burn, and I knew it. And the thing that I was most worried about was it not stopping. of us actually going on Monday and starting to shoot, because it had unraveled so much, because I bit off more than I could chew at the time, because I was naive to the process at that time. So I thought I could accomplish something that I could not. So when the financing did fall through, I was actually pretty relieved, because I think we would have pulled it off. I think we would have had something, but it would not have been at the level that I wanted it to be. And that was a massive, massive failure, a massive punch to the gut when it did fall through. And I had to call every single collaborator that had been involved in this for months and stoked about it for months and tell them, we're not doing this. And some people picking them up at the airport and telling them we're not doing this when they just flew in to do it. But instead of, for a moment it did get me on, my knees, and I was feeling pretty horrible, and I knew I was going to have to tell people publicly about this. But then Daniel James and Justin Robinson and my brothers Josh and Tim and the rest of the crew, really put me back into perspective and reminded me of the things that I always say on the show, which is, you find a bigger wall, get a bigger sledgehammer. And we practice what we preach. We didn't let that stop us. We had some gear. I had $300 and we found a place locally that was this open area. So I had those things. What could I make with those things? And that's what we did. With $300, minimal gear, very, very tiny crew, we went out and made what is still one of my favorite short films that I had ever made. So we took that failure and we parlayed it into something that ended up being a success. But the two results of that were, one of my favorite short films I've ever made, which of course I made tons of mistakes on and learned from those mistakes from a craft standpoint. And two, one of the biggest failures I've ever made that taught me probably the most in the smallest amount of time of my entire career. I learned how to put together a project of that level, which then took me into the projects that I did afterwards that were successful, that did run smoothly, up into Ballistic, which had an insane amount of moving parts, but were all possible because of the massively public, making me look stupid failure of Outsiders falling through. And that's mainly what I'm talking about, is accept those failures. They're going to happen. And then taking those failures for the number two thing and learning from them. After Outsiders, there was a lot of just thinking back on what went wrong, what could I have done better, what was falling apart, because not only the finances, but the machine as a whole was not operating as it needed to for a project of that size. But after the fact, I was able to look back on that and do that. And you could do that with every project too. With every project, you're failing in certain ways. Hopefully you succeed enough to where the project is a success overall, but there's going to be a lot of failures. And you definitely find that in the editing room as a director as well. Whenever I'm in the editing room as a director with the footage, it's never quite what I was hoping for. I screwed up pacing over here. I didn't get this shot. This didn't quite turn out how I want. The realization of the scene wasn't quite how I thought it was going to be. And you have to be able to alter that and figure out a way to make it work. But then go back and, why did my initial intention not translate? Why did I have to shift so much? And I think that'll always happen. You hear some of the greatest filmmakers of all time talking about that, but you can minimize that, I think. And I have been able to minimize that over time because of 1 and 2. Fail big, fail often, and then think back and learn from those mistakes. So then there's number 3, which is keep going, do it again, don't let it stop you. Just the continuation toward this thing. If you're really passionate about it, you have to be beating your head against the wall 24/7 before you can make that hole to hopefully crawl through to the other side. And, it's things like Outsiders and whatnot that did for a minute maybe make me want to stop, but then you just keep going anyway, and those failures turn to successes over time. But it doesn't even have to be a failure that you experience that will be a brick wall for you. Some of us, including myself, when it comes to writing, the brick wall is just the fear of, doing a bad job, finding out I'm not very good at this. And I just had to decide that that would be okay. With writing my first feature, the thing that blocked me for so long from writing my first feature was finding out that I wasn't capable. So I just had to decide that if I'm not, that'll be okay. I'll do these other things, but let's find this out. And I went about writing my first feature, and I'm really happy with where it ended up. It was a very long process getting there, and of course, it stood on the shoulders of all the things I've written before, and I have written up to 60 pages before. But I was blocked a little bit by that fear of failure. So I very much am trying to practice what I preach to this day. There's always that thing that makes you not want to do it. You know, going back to ballistic. On the way, I've talked about this before, but on the way to ballistic, all I could think of in LA, knowing that there's going to be practical explosions, dudes on wires, 100 people looking at me saying, now what? What do you want to do next? And having to figure that out, knowing how action goes, knowing that whatever I planned is going to fall through and I'm going to have to come up with it on the spot. All I could think of in the car on the way there is, I don't want to do it. I just want to go back to the hotel. I just want to turn the car around and go back to the hotel, feeling sick to my stomach. And I think if that's what's happening to you, that's an indication that this is really important to you. And that's something you need to do. And, you know, keeping those things in mind and accepting that even if I fail, that's okay. Because that's one step closer to that ultimate goal that I want to get to. If you want to get to that place where you're making films that is moving an audience, you know, entertaining them, making them think about something important, all of the above, you need to go through that process of failure to refine your craft to be able to craft those experiences for an audience. And that's the thing that I'm always trying to keep in mind. It's okay to fail. It's actually kind of great when it happens. It sucks when it happens, but right after, it's the best thing that could have happened to you because that means you learned a ton. Something I hate the most, I mean, not hate, it's kind of nice when people like things, but when you deliver something, say I deliver a script and all I get back from that person was, yeah, it was good. I really liked it. Well, what was wrong about it? How do I learn from this? Get me feedback. You know, unless this is the best thing I've ever read in my life, which is never going to happen. Where didn't it work for you? I want, where am I failing as a writer? Or if I deliver a cut, same thing. Where are we failing to deliver this film to fire on the highest, you know, level that it possibly can? So hopefully you can take those three things. Like I've tried to take those three things. And again, I'm not, you know, talking from the pulpit here. I'm saying the things that I say to myself all the time, especially right now. Every time you step into a new level, you feel unworthy, you feel incapable, you feel like you're about to just look really stupid. And this is a time where you prove to everyone that you can't do this, but you can't let that stop you. You got to just accept it. That might be the case. Oh well, you'll do it anyway. And if you do it anyway, you'll be surprised at how much pride you will have in the little successes, even if there are the big failures. But those big failures, again, is what's going to take you from here to where you ultimately want to go. But that's it. It's just something that I've been thinking about a lot, that I'm always trying to remind myself. And like I said, a lot of people ask me questions, and I think fundamentally that's the answer. That's where it's coming from. That's the thing that we really need to be thinking about to help us progress as filmmakers. Again, I'm saying us, me included. I'm not an instructor here telling you how to do a thing. I'm talking to myself too. It's something I'm constantly reminding myself of. That is it for today. The music from today's episode, and most of our episodes really, have been from MusicBed. You should definitely check out MusicBed if you were doing, especially if you're doing any kind of event video, but it's really great for needle drop feels for short films. It's really hard to get sort of that needle drop vibe from an artist with lyrics into your film, and MusicBed has like some of the highest quality stuff out there. So pretty much anything you could want is there. The way they curate the music to be able to find what you need quickly, how cheap the pricing is, especially if you're doing stuff for YouTube, which most of us are, how quickly they clear. If it ever gets flagged, how fast that will clear for you is pretty amazing. So definitely check out MusicBed if you need music for any project that you're working on at all. Links in the notes below for that. But that is it for today. Until next time, don't forget to write, shoot, edit, repeat.